Hello, this is Chris with Phoenix Gaming. Today we're going to do an old world video. We're going to talk about units and formations and how they work. First, we're going to discuss the units and formation types. Then we're going to discuss close order formations, open order formations, and then skirmish formations. We're not going to dig into the army specific formations. We'll save that type of stuff for another video that we would do based on that specific army and any formations they may have. Units and formations. A unit is typically multiple models of a same type that have formed a squad or formation. There are single model units, like dragons and certain characters. Units will almost always have to be in a formation. There are some exceptions because, this is a Games Workshop game. There are multiple formations. If a unit has access to multiple formations, you choose one during deployment, and then you can change it during the game by reforming. Let's take a look at the most common formation types. Close order formations. Most common formation, all models must face the same direction. They are arranged in ranks and files or rows and columns. And they should have an equal number of models in each rank if possible. If they can't, then the last rank is the only one that's permitted to have fewer models. We're going to take a look at the example from the book. There's a little arrow that I've added to the graphic so that you can see which way the models are facing. And then all the check marks are acceptable for a close order formation. So as you can see, the top left, they just make effectively a perfect rectangle, and that's okay. And then in the second picture, you can see that the rear rank has fewer models than the front two ranks, and that's okay. And then obviously, if we just have one rank, then we're fine. If we look at what's not acceptable, the bottom left shows that they are not in a formation. They're staggered, they're off center, and that does not work. In the middle bottom picture, you'll see that the front rank has 5 models and then the next two have 4 models. And what would need to happen in order to make that a viable formation, one of the models in the fourth rank would have to move up. One of the models in the back rank, would have to move up, create another rank of 5, and then the rear rank would have 3 models. And then again, the bottom right, you can see already what the issue is. They have 5 in the front rank, 5 in the back rank, and 4 in the middle rank. You cannot do that. You need to push that model forward so that you have 4 in the rear rank. Unit shapes for close order units. The unit shape is important because it can grant bonuses. Units can either be in combat order or marching column. A unit that is in combat order is wider than it is deep. And that means you just have more models per rank than per file. Or it can be a square. And a good example of that is if you have a rank that is 5 models wide in your formation, then you can only have 1 to 5 models deep in that formation. So they could be 5 by 1, 5 by 2, 5 by 3, 5 by 4, 5 by 5. Units in a close order claim a rank bonus of +1 rank beyond the first. This rank bonus is based on the width of the unit and dependent on the troop type. For example, infantry need at least 5 models wide, and they can gain a total bonus of +2 to their rank bonus. There are rules that can increase rank bonuses above and beyond this, but this is the core rule for it. And then being in combat order gives you an additional +1 to your combat resolution. So if your formation is wider than it is deep or is a square, you're going to automatically add 1 to your combat resolution. This is the picture in the book that shows you what a close order unit would look like that's in combat order. They are wider than they are deep. As you can see, it's 5 wide, 3 deep. The other option is to be in a marching column, and that's a unit that is deeper than it is wide. And that's, for example, if you have a unit that is 5 models wide, it needs to be 6 or more models deep, and then it becomes a marching column. Marching columns cannot claim a rank bonus, and they cannot charge. They also triple its movement when marching. They also don't get the +1 combat resolution because they're not in the combat formation. They're in the marching formation. So what this does is it gives you more mobility by allowing you to be able to triple your movement when you run, but you forego the ability to charge, and you can't claim any rank bonuses. Here's an example of a marching column unit. As you can see, they are 4 wide and then they are 5 deep. And then if you have a really large unit, if you're talking about something that's 40 models, they could be 5 wide still and then just be 8 deep. In addition to close order, you're going to see open order quite a bit. Open order gives you more mobility, but it sacrifices the combat resolution bonus that you can get from closed order. When you have an open order unit, you can reform into open order to adopt a looser formation. That's in quotes because you don't actually loosen up the formation, they still just stay where they are. Units with open order do have quick turn, which means after moving, unless it marched or fled, an open order unit may pivot up to 90 degrees on its center. And according to the FAQ that was released, you must still account for the pivot in the movement. So you don't get to move 12 inches and then pivot if your movement is 12 inches. You have to move and then account for the movement that the pivot would take up. Units in open order do not become disrupted by difficult or dangerous terrain. We'll talk about disrupted a little bit more when we do the combat section. Open order units can also be in combat order or marching column. These have the same requirements as they do in close order, but in open order, it doesn't seem to give the +1 combat resolution. It sounds like you forfeit that for more mobility. I could be wrong, but that's the way I'm seeing it in the rule book. The last core rulebook formation is the skirmish formation, and it's not as much of a formation as it is just a group or a squad. You don't form up, you use very similar rules to what you would see in 40K or Sigmar for coherency. They'll have the 1-inch rule. Every model must be within 1 inch of at least one other model in that same unit. The unit must maintain coherency. You cannot remove casualties in a way that would break coherency. And if they do somehow lose coherency, you'll remove casualties until they regain it. So if you have played 40K or Sigmar, these are going to be very familiar rules for you. And skirmish units are going to be an easy transition. And you're probably thinking, well, these things seem like an auto take. And yes and no. We'll get into that as well. First of all, skirmishers have no flank or rear arcs. They have 360-degree vision, which is drastically different from your normal formation units. Your normal formation units will only have line of sight in the front 45-degree arc, which we will cover when we start talking about the shooting phase. Other units can see through skirmish unit formations as long as they can see between models. So when you draw those line of sight lines to see if you can see something, they have to go between models and bases. If the lines pass over models or bases, then line of sight will be blocked. Here's an example of a skirmisher formation. As you can see, each model is within 1 inch of at least one other model. When skirmishers move, they just move freely, ignoring wheeling and pivots. Once again, if you're a 40K or Sigmar player, this is going to feel very familiar. Things just get to move. You don't have to worry about whether or not it's wheeling, turning, etc. When you get into combat, if skirmishers become engaged, they would still form up into base contact with each other, just like any other unit in the game would look. And then if they get charged or when they charged, if one of the models in the skirmish unit cannot base an enemy model, that model cannot get in the fighting rank, and they would just fill in behind the fighting rank. What this means is that you can't wrap units. It becomes a regular formation once you charge. And then in addition, what that also means is because models can't move farther than the charge roll, if you only have one model make the charge roll, you effectively have a unit that's one rank wide and everybody else just fills in behind in this weird little long line, and that's how it would work. It's very critical that you understand how to position your skirmish units because bad dice rolls and bad positioning will make them more of a detriment than a help. Skirmish units cannot claim rank bonuses, so it doesn't matter how big your unit is or your formation is. If you outnumber that enemy unit, if you're a skirmish unit, you don't get the rank bonus. You also cannot disrupt enemy units when charging the flank or the rear. That's another reason why skirmish isn't necessarily oppressive. It is very good, and it is a very good tool to have in your toolbox, but you have to understand how to use them. Because flanking somebody with a skirmish unit isn't necessarily going to give you many bonuses, if any. There won't be any inherently, it would just be understanding your positioning and what you can and can't do with them. Skirmish units may only be joined by characters with the same subcategory troop type. So if the skirmish unit is light cavalry, for example, it can only get light cavalry characters. Heavy infantry can only be joined by heavy infantry, and so on. Skirmishers also interact with panic a little bit differently. What happens is if a skirmisher unit breaks, they cause panic if they are annihilated or break free as normal, and they cause panic when they flee through other skirmisher units, but they do not cause panic if they flee through your formed units. So if you have a skirmish unit that breaks and runs away, if it runs through, let's say you have a unit of Boingrats, Squig Hoppers, they're skirmish. If they break and run away, if they run through a unit of goblins, because the goblins are not skirmish, the goblins would not have to take that panic test, even if the Squig Hoppers ran through them. But if they ran away and ran through a unit of Wolf Riders, which are also skirmish, then those Wolf Riders would have to make a panic test. I believe the Wolf Riders are skirmish. I could be wrong on that, but my memory is saying they are. There are some armies that have their own special formations, such as Bretonia and their famed Lance. The rules for those are going to be with those armies, and as we discuss each army individually, we'll discuss those formations. Big shout out to my patrons, the real Donnie G, Jamie, Lord Wellingstone, Danny Boy, and Captain Too Tall. Everybody, thank you for the support. As usual, links on the screen, links in the description. Thanks for watching.